Good morning, good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming along. My name's David Kynaston. This is the second presentation I'm doing. I did one yesterday about traditional sign writing and how that's got a new sort of lease of life, especially in the cities, in London and places like that. And today I'm going to talk about gold leaf and pictorial work, which I do as much as I can on all of my signs. Just a bit of a background about me. I'm a traditional sign writer. I have been for 27 years. All of my signs are hand painted. I've done a little bit of vinyl and modern signage in the past, but my passion has always been to hand paint signs, and that's what my customers have always wanted. So they obviously dictate everything. So that's how it goes, really. And I keep very, very busy. I've got some great customers. I've got a good little business. I just work by myself, and it suits me great. So what I'm going to do today is show you a few of my own signs today, as opposed to yesterday, where I used all different people's signs, and just explain why I do them the way I do and how they've come about, and why I use the gold leaf and do the pictorial work on them, why I believe in it so much and why I think it's so important. And then afterwards, when we finish, I'll do a little bit of a gold leaf demonstration. And we'll see how that goes, actually. Any questions you have, please feel free to ask them as we're going along, or we can just ask afterwards. And if anybody wants to have a go afterwards, then we can do that as well. We'll just take it as it goes, really. So, okay, so this is a bit of an example of different jobs I've got here. This is typically how I design my signs. Still, I do everything by hand. I draw it out by hand. I don't do it on computer. I scan it into computer, and I might, just like on this, in the Photoshop, and just tidy it all up. But I still prefer just to get a pencil out, go and meet the customer, get a pencil out, do a sketch, come back and do a scaled drawing. And those, that's for a local authority, for a council job. And the customers, they like to see that. They get the idea of a bit of craftsmanship. And it seems to be, for me, it works as a really good way of selling work. It's the easiest way for me to do it. I struggle doing it with a computer. It's just a pencil. We've got a few other examples, a little mural I've done, contemporary type of 1950s type pictures here. These are fire engines which I restored for the Sultan of Brunei, vintage fire engines, all in gold leaf. This is a modern type of sign for a tattoo artist. And a bit of gold leaf here. So we'll go through the pictures, and like I say, any questions, then please feel free to ask them. Okay, this was a local sign I did in my local town in Llangollen in North Wales, just for a little, a quaint old 17th century, 18th century place which has been done for sweets and candy and places like that. And again, it's I meet up with a customer like that. I listen to them very, very carefully, what they want to do, what sort of people they want to attract to their business, and then I go away and I design something based on that. The important thing is, wherever I can, there's no gold leaf on this, we'll go on to that afterwards, is the pictorial element. Putting a picture on the sign is such a strong image. It doesn't need to dominate the whole thing, but just a nice little graphic like that can pull people towards it. And especially something like that, if it's a tourist place and there's children there, well, children and adults are going to see that more than anything, and that's going to help sell the product. So that's why I do something like that. I make it an interesting shape, cut it out, and just generally try and make it as nice as possible, really, so that it does the job. And of course, it's all legible and it's easy to read. We've got a detailed picture of it here. I do sneaky little things, like I've got my signature just in the side there. So, a bit of artistic license that sort of goes along with my job, really. But and again, I designed all the box and the name on it, and it's all done quickly. Everything like this would be painted in a couple of days. I make up the signboard. The signboard's all made out of wood. And, of course, I've got to paint it in a couple of days because it's a commercial job. It's got to make me money, of course. And it's got to be up there. And but more importantly, it's got to make the customer money. There's no point me doing it unless it makes them more money than it makes me. So that's a nice little example, I think, of a pictorial sign. And all the sort of lettering is my own. I don't use fonts as such. I know the old classical letter styles which were invented by the Romans, and I work off work off those ideas and just do it to suit, really. Okay, that is my dad who's sitting at the back there. This is a van which I painted. I don't do many vehicles anymore. I used to do lots and lots. 20, 30 years ago, I'd be doing them all the time. Trucks and buses and everything else. But it's all sort of changed now, and that's gone over to vinyl and digital wraps and things, and that's fair enough. I think it suits them well, really, providing they're well designed, of course. But occasionally I'll do the odd vehicle, and that's just one example. I thought I'd better put one in anyhow, and a modern sort of contemporary cartoon on it. Okay, and there's the cartoon again, just one of mine, which is actually, it's a shame we haven't got this all on, because this is on the bonnet, and right down here there's an egg. So it's almost like running away looking at an egg. So it's nice to be able to adapt from a very traditional sort of picture to something fun and punchy and cartoon, and whatever's right for the job, you know, that's what it's about. And again, I put this in just because the customer said we sell pet shop and homeware, but we want a kettle on it. Well, I mean, it's almost like a design nightmare. How do you go about this? But there's always ways of doing it. There's always ways of fitting everything in and getting it to be a bit of fun or whatever. And I think it sort of worked out nice. And the steam comes up and comes through here, and there's always ways. It's a bit of fun. Okay. This was a bit of fun. I just want to tell you the story about this. I painted a few pictures of pets and dogs, whether they be on presents and things like that. And a friend of mine said, "Can you paint a picture of my dog sometime?" Oh, and I didn't want to do it. I had too much on, and I said, "Yeah, I'll do it sometime. I'll do it sometime." So I emailed her daughter. I didn't have her email, so I emailed her daughter a while later, and I said, "Oh, I've done a picture of Branson," and she said, "Oh, great! I'll get my mum to come up for it." I said, "Oh, it's not here. You'll have to find it." So this went past, about 2 months went past, and all of a sudden she put a posting on Facebook. "I found Branson," and I painted him onto a sign in the local town. It was the only way to do it, really. So yeah, it's just any excuse, and just to, it just works well, you see. It's a friendly sort of thing. A hand-painted pictorial really works well. They're reasonably quick to paint. I paint something like that in an hour or 2 hours or whatever. So, yeah, it all sort of works well. On the lettering, I put a bit of interest on the lettering, you know, a bit of a shade, so it looks like there's a bit of a depth and all that. Obviously, everything is flat, but that is the illusion with sign writing. You want to try and create a bit of depth, a bit of foreground, middle ground, and background. So you've almost got the foreground here, the middle ground, and then the background. And it just in the way that a traditional painter would have painted a picture, really. Okay. Again, a little cartoon just on a rustic sort of sign. These are sort of caricatures of my own children, really, on a little sign for their school. And rustic sort of dry brush lettering, just to make it look aged. And that's very fashionable at the moment, I think, because people like seeing old worn-out signs. And for me as a sign writer, it can only be done with paint. It's yes, they might find a way of digitally doing it so that they look old and worn, but it's actually very quick to do, because you're just quickly painting it. You're not caring too much. You are caring. You're getting your letter shapes nice and neat, but you're not caring too much about the second coating, because you want that sort of rustic, worn look. And I've done a few shop fronts and things now where people have especially asked, "Can we have it so it looks as if it's worn away?" And I said, "You can. Do you want to wait 10 years or have it instantly? Because it will look like that in 10 years. No, we want it now." Okay, these are signs. These are an interesting job. I rent a wall space at a local heritage railway station, and then I let out each space to individual businesses. I have about 10 or 15, up to 15 down there, and they pay me a monthly rent, and I do all of these signs on, so this is a bit of mixing new with old. All of these are on an aluminium composite panel, like dye bond. I put an oak frame around them, and they are 40, well, I get 3 sheets out of an 8x4, so just trying to think, it's 1,200 millimeters high, about 4 foot high. And they're all hand-painted. I've got all different, whether it's copper leaf and gold leaf and just whatever it is. And my theory behind them is if I make them as nice as possible, it'll work for that customer where people will stop, they will look at them, they'll want to go to those places or whatever, and then if the customers are happy, they'll come back to me and they'll say, the advert is working, we want to re-advertise. And that's my sort of theory. You know, I want to look after my customers. I want them for the long term and just do as nice a job as possible. Okay, this is my daughter. This was an important one. I do a lot of work for heritage work for councils because it's very important in heritage areas where they have specifically old buildings and they've worked hard to preserve the stonework and the woodwork and everything like that. Well, of course, it's natural that if they can't have contemporary signs, sometimes it's insisted that they have to have traditional heritage signs. And why not, really? You know, because, you know, we make the heritage signs so that they really do last a long time. So this was a good example where I restored it for an old building in Chester nearby. I repainted all this. It was all in 23.5 carat gold leaf. And my daughter, who was just 4 at the time, came into the workshop. And I said, Laura, I said, you know what to do, don't you? I just had a few little bits I was just touching up. So she picked up the gold. I did that. I took a photograph. I sent it off to the council. They used it in their brochure. I'm over here doing it. So it was just all nice. It was a good example, really. And of course, and they love it. It's all a good thing. Okay, and this is just an example, a bit of a blurry photo when it's blown up this big. But these are honours boards which I update at golf clubs and Masonic lodges, sports clubs, schools, places like that. Lots and lots of these places. And I go there and I paint each name on every year. Sometimes I can go, if I'm backdating these boards, I tried doing these in vinyl when I first started because there was so many, 1,000 names, things like that, and I thought, well, I'm never going to hand paint all these. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't weed the little letters, which were 10 millimeters high, all the little full stops and everything were just pulling off. So I just ended up painting them. And I can paint up to 300 names a day, so that's paint them and gild them. So I don't think that's a bad comparison, really. And it suits me great. So I go back to these places now and I update these, and I update about 1,000 of these boards a year and just put extra names on, and it's good work. It's regular work. I know I've got that every single year. And they're finished. I paint the size on them, the glue, and then I put 23.5 carat gold leaf on top of them. And the reason we do that is because these boards will hopefully be up there for 100 years or whatever. I mean, I say that because a lot of these places have got old boards which are 100 years ago, 100 years old, and they were done in just the same way 100 years ago. But I've had other boards where I've had to restore where people have done them in vinyl maybe 10 years ago, and in vinyl letters 10 years ago, the names, they're inside, and the names have shriveled or they've peeled off. So they're going back to having them painted. So that's great with me. So, you know, they need sign writers to do them. There's no question about it. Okay, this is another such example, one which I did for a tennis club. This is an MDF board. It's this sort of size. I hand painted all this background so that it looks like a walnut background. So I paint all that with sponges and different glazes and swirl it all over like that. I put a very high quality lacquer over it. I do all of this in gold leaf. I design all this. This is all my lettering and everything like this. Paint all of this in gold leaf. A gold leaf line all the way around. Make sure I got my name on, only if I'm proud of the job, which I am. And then I put the names on and update them as and when. And this is, I mean, I've only updated one name on this since 2006. So, and it's in the club for a long time, hopefully. You know, it's a nice bit of, I try and design these almost like a little bit of furniture, really, a center point for the club, which I think is really important. They take a lot of pride in them. And I do a lot of these now, and they really are lovely to do. And of course, you know, with them being in gold leaf, it's difficult to see on a photograph, but the light sparkles off them, beautiful. And they'll never fade or anything like that. They're inside, and they're fine. Okay, this is an example of a fascia which I had to do for a company called Maypole Dairy Company. And Maypole Dairies had over 1,000 branches over the UK, a few in Europe as well. And they ceased trading in the 1960s, and they had glass fascias everywhere. And the fascias would have been, the letters would have been carved, probably in pine or mahogany, carved letters like that. The letters were about that big. And then on top of that, they had glass put on top. The glass was painted all in reverse except for the shape of the letters. So you would look through the glass onto the letters, but all this would be the back of the gold. It would look fantastic. And there was a shop restored recently, not far from me, an old maple shop, and they wanted to know if we could do the glass fascia like that, give them a price for the glass fascia. It was out of their budget, so I said, okay, well, let's look at another way we could do it. So we did the letters in gold, and that is an absolute flat letter. And then what I did then, I got some paper, and I cut it almost like to a shape like that, and I burnished that way, and then I burnished that way. And you can do that with gold. And by doing that, it looks as if it's carved, prismatic, but it's dead flat, and it works perfect. And if you have a look at it when the light hits it, as you move, the lights move with it. So you can only do that with gold. You could never do that with paint. It would just never work. Okay, and there it is, of course. That's the whole shop. So that was a lovely job to do. And these were done in glass in reverse. They call them the old stall risers. And then we did all that as well and finished it in gold. And it was a lovely little sort of a preservation job to do, restoration, preservation, historical job. Okay, this was a sign I did in nearby Chester. I'd shown the one sign yesterday, and this was for the council, and they just wanted something quite special there. They told me what it was and sort of left it up to me. They said, it's Godstall Lane. We worked out the wording between us. Chester's Romantic Heart. It had to be something like that because there was bridal shops and things like that down there. So it's opposite the cathedral. And I found an old picture by an artist called J.C. Leyendecker, which I managed to adapt a little bit and change. And my theory was we've got like a father and a daughter. They came out to the cathedral, out to the church, which is just opposite, and they're walking down Godstall Lane, and she's carrying her Bible there, and it was just a nice way to do it, and it was used for publicity to sort of, when they'd done the unveiling of the signs for it, and a nice example, and I've combined the gold leaf there with a bit of pictorial, a nice ribbon, and ribbons are a lovely sort of effect for a sign writer, you know, and a very traditional effect. We say the ribbons, some people call them scrolls. It's to do all this sort of effect. It just looks really nice, and it's almost what's expected. And it's just another example of how a sign has got to be so much more than just letters. You know, it really is. We've got to get that message across and do it in the best possible way. Okay, and there's a close-up of it. And you can see a little Bible there, and yeah, a nice sort of stylized way of doing it. I've overlapped that onto the gold and a bit of a shadow off, and yeah, it was all worked out just right, I think. Okay, this is a different sort of job, just to show that the variation of work I do is huge, and I do a lot of work for a private school, which is a fantastic customer of mine, and I do lots of honours boards for them. Some of the most important honours boards I paint are called the Oxbridge boards, and basically all of the children which have passed out of the school, and then they've gone on to Oxford and Cambridge. The best ones have gone on to Oxford and Cambridge. When they've finished in Oxford and Cambridge, and they've done well there, their school, Shrewsbury School, is notified. I'm told then, these are the ones who've gone out of Oxford and Cambridge, they've got these honours. So I go to the Oxbridge boards, which they've got in there, and I paint their names on what they've qualified. And these names go back 300-400 years. So it's a hugely important thing for the school. You know, it's very important. And there's old boards going up and down the stairwells, hundreds and hundreds of names. But as well as all the sporting achievement boards and all the honours boards I do for Shrewsbury School, occasionally I do different things like this. Rowing is a really big thing for them. And this was one which I did recently. It was the end of a full oar, actually. I think it was 12 or 14 feet long, and they sent it over to Boston, Massachusetts. And it was to an old pupil, an old boy, as they call him, in the school. And they wanted to give it to him as a gift because I think he'd donated some money for a new building or something like that. And they thought, well, that will make a nice present for him. So a terrible, difficult surface to paint on, but you can do it. You know, there's always ways of doing things and painting the school crest on. And I think that's gone on the wall in his kitchen or something like that. Well, I certainly hope so, unless it's stuck in customs somewhere. Right. And I think that's the last one, yeah. So we shot through them. And any questions before I do a little bit of demonstration, just feel free. Okay, well, we'll jump onto this demonstration. I've painted this on, when you do gold leaf work, let's just get this on, so I look the part, maybe. when you do gold leaf work, the gold can't go on immediately. Like any sign writing, you paint the letters on first. Well, you paint the letters on, and that's it. But with gold leaf, you paint a size on, a glue on, and then the gold sticks to it afterwards. So you wait about an hour or so, depending on what size you can have. Other ones where you can wait 24 hours, and then it's gone off just right, and you put the gold on. So I'll pull this forward now. There we are. I put it there. So we can all see that, I think. So I painted this on about an hour and a half ago, and it'll do. I've improvised a little bit with what paint I've used. Generally, you use something called the gold size, which is a paint which doesn't go off hard. It stays a little bit soft. It's got a bit of a bite to it. And when it's got that bite, almost like a little bit of sellotape or whatever, it can just sort of bite. It's certainly not wet, but it's got a bit of white. What you can do then is get your gold leaf. The gold leaf is 23. This is 23.5 carat gold. And it's pressed onto tissues. So to give you an idea how thick that is, it's hand beaten. It starts off with a little piece of gold, which could probably be beaten to the whole size of all this area of carpet here now. And you would get probably about 100,000 pieces of that would make up 1 centimetre. But that's exactly the same gold as what is used for picture frames, for domes on temples, for weather vanes, for signs. And gold leaf never fades. It was what was used thousands of years ago by the Egyptians in the pyramids, the Romans. Everybody's used gold leaf. And the reason we use it is because there is no substitute for real gold. There's nothing. And it's funny, gold leaf is the best thing. Gold paint is the worst thing. It's the worst paint ever. It's just like mud. And if you see it next to this, it fades and everything. But gold paint is fantastic. So the way how we apply this in this case, on this lettering, the letters are painted on. And gold leaf is almost everyday work for me. People still want it. They still want to pay for it. And it's not that expensive. If it was too expensive, we wouldn't be doing it, of course. So it's pressed on like that in a tissue form. And we just keep using it, just keep going through all the leaves. You end up with bits falling everywhere. At the end of the day, you've got gold all in your face and in your ears and everywhere because it's so incredibly thin. You can hardly touch it. It just sort of disappears. Let's get another one on as well. But it looks lovely. There's no substitute for gold. And, of course, for a customer who wants to reflect a quality image, absolute quality, then there's no question about it. It's gold leaf, but I still use it for contemporary work as well, a little bit of fun, punchy stuff. Sometimes it's used on outlines or just all sorts. You just can't use it. You can't beat it. I've used it on motorcycle tanks. I've used it almost everywhere. There's no substitute for it, of course. You know, and it's even specified a lot, you know, with councils and things like that. So once it's on like that, we've got little bits over the edge. What we do is we just burnish it off like that. And that takes the excess off. It ends up everywhere. And I've got somewhere, not sure if I can find this now. I have a little pad for burnishing this. Let's have a look. Bear with me. No, we can't. Can't seem to find it. Well, that's a bit of a shame, really. It's all right, though. But what the actual pad does, I'll see if I can just do it with this. It's a little pad of velvet, and it scratches it. I'm sure I can do it with this. No, it's cutting through it. But it scratches it to throw the light off at different angles. And, of course, I could make that letter. I could burnish it so that it looks carved, so that it looks sparkling, so it's got little twirls or anything in it. And we also use other leaves as well. I'll keep doing this as we're talking. We use other leaves as well. There's variegated leaf, which is used with different coppers. And they almost like put it in a tank and they stir them all around to make swirling effects. And that can look really nice as well. But you need to varnish over that. The beauty is with gold leaf it's because it's so naturally resilient to all the elements. It will last and last. It will never, ever fade. And sometimes you see very old signs which have worn away and the paint's peeling off them and they've faded and everything else, but there's a bit of gold leaf on. And it's just there. It's as good as anything. And the weather hasn't been able to get through it to attack the board behind or anything. So there's no substitute for gold. There's no question about it. I don't think it'll never go out of fashion, of course not. Things will change and they'll try different ideas. But let's just do one little more base. So I will lay thousands and thousands of these leaves every year. There we are. Okay, so if anybody wants to have a go with this afterwards, then we can do that. I'll leave all those bits for now. Okay, the other thing which we can do as well, I'll just show just a few sort of little ways how I would do the pictorial effects and things like this. I paint ribbons a lot. I've shown you on some of those signs there, a lot of scrolls and ribbons where they've got all these sort of curves. And the way how we do those is, let me find a pencil. Let's find a pencil. Right. Okay, let's have a go by here. So if I was to paint a ribbon, we've got this sort of effect. Yep. So that could say, welcome, inside. So how we paint this, just very quickly to give you an impression of it more than anything, really. If we painted this piece in here, so we painted that there. Let's paint this here. Okay, what I do then is, I usually do this with 3 colors. So you've got your medium color, and then you've got your light and your dark. So you know that, let's say the light's coming down from here, but you've got the shade by there. So what I do then is get a little bit of white. This is quite strong, obviously. And we just blend it back and two. And that's it. So on that piece there, that's all I do on that. So if we wipe this off, we might as well carry on all the way through with this. So we're on the dark here again. So all these are oil-based paints which I'm using, enamel paints. They've changed a lot in the last few years because of new paint legislations. They've stopped putting lead in them, and they're not as easy to use. And it's nice to have a bit of lead. But they're all right. They're still usable. But one of the problems is they will fade a little bit quicker than what they used to. And of course, they used to last years and years, and now they'll only last years. Okay. It goes off quite quick as well, this paint. Doesn't mean it dries quick, but it loses its wet edge. So you have to sort of work quick. But that's good. We need to work quick all the time. Okay, so if I get onto my white again, all I would do on something like this is sometimes you just do a little bit of a just put a little bit more in. I think we might as well finish this off now. I'd be bad not to finish it for you. So we do the little piece underneath. Okay, let's do this here, nice and dark underneath here. Yeah, a bit more under here. Let's get some more light on that. I'll wipe the excess off on there. Okay, so we've got a bit of light by here. Got a bit of light on there. Let's get that one right. If you think it's too light, you just come back in, you push back this way, and it makes it a bit darker again. There we are. Right. So that's about it, really, for the ribbons. The other thing, of course, we can do is just punchy little fun pictorial things. I mean, we can go on and on. Obviously, I can't paint a full sort of picture on here, like a portrait or something like that. Sometimes when I'm doing pictures like that, I'll use an overhead projector where I will put the image, I might find it on the internet or whatever, or I'll hand draw it, or a bit of both, really. I do like to do my own things. I don't want to be copying things all my life. And photocopy it, put it on acetate, on an overhead projector, and throw it right up at the screen and work on whatever height, whatever size you want. If we were doing little hands, I do lots and lots of these little punchy sort of hands like this. Okay? Let's show you how we do that. And they're just lovely little quick cartoony things. They look much nicer than an arrow. A bit more friendly, really. I think they help direct the way a little bit better. There we are, and that's all we do for something like that. Almost as simple as that, really. It just gives you a good sort of impression. A bit of an idea, really. A bit of fun. And a bit better than an arrow. So I think that's about it on it.